The wind screamed across the white valley like a living monster, throwing ice against Evan's face as he pushed forward through the deadly blizzard. He wrapped his scarf tighter and kept his head down, trying to reach the small supply town before the storm became worse. The world around him was nothing but white darkness, snow above, snow below, and snow blowing sideways. Even breathing felt painful. He walked slowly, step by step, when suddenly he heard something strange. It was soft, almost too soft for the storm. At first, he thought it was the wind playing tricks on him, but then he heard it again, a weak, broken cry. The sound didn't belong to the storm. It didn't belong to any animal he knew. It sounded alive. Evan stopped walking. His heart began to beat faster. He turned his head, trying to listen again. The storm swallowed the sound for a moment. Then it came again, this time two small cries, like newborn babies struggling to breathe. "What is that?" Evan whispered to himself. He followed the sound, pushing through knee-deep snow until he reached a small snowbank that looked different from the rest. Something was buried under it. Something moving. Evan dropped to his knees and brushed away the snow with his gloves. What he found made his whole body freeze. It was an alien woman. Her skin was pale blue, almost turning gray from the cold. Her clothes were torn, and her long dark hair was frozen stiff. She lay curled on her side, shaking violently. In her arms, wrapped in a thin cloth, were two newborn alien twins, tiny, fragile, and turning blue from the cold. The woman tried to lift her head when Evan touched her shoulder. Her lips were trembling so much she could barely speak. Her eyes were filled with pain and fear. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "My babies." Evan looked at the twins. They were barely moving. Their breaths were shallow. Their skin looked too cold, too still. If he left them even for a few minutes, they would die. He looked back at the woman. She had bruises on her arms, and there were signs of a struggle around her, drag marks in the snow, broken footprints, and the shape of something heavy being thrown. It was clear someone had left her here to die. Evan felt a mix of shock and anger rising inside him. "Who did this to you?" he asked, but the woman was too weak to answer. The storm grew stronger. Snow whipped against them like knives. Evan knew he had only one choice: save them or walk away. Walking away would mean 3 lives lost tonight. Saving them meant risking his own life in the storm. He took a deep breath, looked at the woman, and made his decision. "I'm not leaving you here," he said firmly. He lifted the twins first, placing them inside his thick coat to warm them with his body heat. Their tiny breaths touched his chest like warm sparks of life. Then he gently lifted the alien woman into his arms. She was freezing and weak, but she held onto him with the last bit of strength she had. "Thank you," she whispered. Evan staggered forward, fighting the storm with all his strength. Every step felt impossible. His legs trembled. His eyes burned from the cold. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Somewhere in the snow behind them, far away but growing closer, Evan thought he heard distant footsteps, multiple, heavy, purposeful. Someone was out there. Someone following. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know what they wanted. Evan pushed through the storm with the alien mother in his arms and the newborn twins pressed against his chest inside his coat. The wind hit him so hard that he almost fell down many times, but he kept going. He knew there was an abandoned cabin somewhere nearby. He had seen it earlier when the sky was still clear. If he could reach it, maybe he could save them. The alien woman's eyes kept closing. Evan shook her gently. "Stay awake. I'm taking you somewhere safe." She made a small sound, but she could not speak. The twins were silent now, which scared Evan even more. Babies should cry. Silence meant danger. Silence meant the cold was winning. Finally, he saw a dark shape through the thick snow, a wooden cabin half buried in ice. The roof was broken in one corner and the door hung crooked, but it was shelter. Evan kicked the door open, carried the woman inside, and placed her gently near the old fireplace. The cabin was freezing, but at least the wind could not hit them here. Evan found a few pieces of broken wood and old chairs and quickly built a fire. When the flames finally came to life, warm orange light filled the room. He placed the twins near the fire, wrapped in blankets he found in a dusty trunk. Their tiny fingers twitched. Their small chests moved again. "Good," Evan whispered. "Stay with me." He then turned to the woman. Her eyes opened slowly. The firelight reflected in her silver pupils. "What's your name?" Evan asked softly. "Lyra," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but not broken anymore. "My babies." "They're alive," Evan said. "Safe and warm." Her eyes filled with tears, relief, fear, and something else. Gratitude. Evan gave her warm water from his bottle. She drank slowly, her hands shaking. When she finished, she looked at him with sadness written across her face. "They left us," she whispered. "My own family." Evan sat beside her. "Why? Why would they do that to you?" She swallowed hard and looked at her babies. The twins were born weak. "My family said they were a burden. Shame to our clan. They dragged me out into the snow and left us to die. They said the storm would bury the evidence." Evan's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists. "That's not a family. That's cruelty." Lyra nodded slowly. "You risked your life for us. Humans, I heard stories. Some good, some bad. I didn't expect kindness." "Well, you met one of the good ones," Evan said with a small smile. But before Lyra could reply, a sound cut through the cabin walls. Crunch. 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 Heavy footsteps in the snow. Lyra's face turned white. "They came back," she whispered. "They will finish what they started." Evan quickly stood up and checked outside through a small crack in the wooden wall. In the blinding snow, dark shapes moved slowly but surely toward the cabin. "How many?" he whispered. "3 hunters," Lyra said, panic trembling in her voice. "My brothers." Evan grabbed his old hunting rifle from his bag. The metal felt cold, but his hands were steady. "Listen to me," he said to Lyra. "They won't touch you or the babies. Not while I'm here." Lyra tried to sit up, but pain pulled her down again. "You cannot fight them alone." Evan checked the rifle and loaded the last remaining bullets. "I don't need to fight them forever. I just need to buy time." The footsteps grew louder, closer, right outside the door now. The twins began to whimper softly. Lyra covered her mouth to hide her fear. Evan stepped in front of the door. Breathing steady. Heart ready. "If they want to hurt you," he whispered, "they'll have to get past me first." The cabin door's shadow darkened. Someone grabbed the handle. The hunters had arrived. Asterisk. The cabin fell completely silent. Even the twins seemed to sense the danger, their small breaths soft and uneven. The fire crackled, but everything else felt frozen, like time itself was holding its breath. Evan stood in front of the crooked door with his rifle tight in his hands. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Snow crunched again, slow, careful steps, circling the cabin like wolves testing their prey. Lyra held her babies close, her body trembling. She whispered, "Evan, they are trained to kill. They smell weakness. They will not stop." Evan did not look back. His eyes stayed on the door. "I don't plan to give them a chance." A loud thump hit the door. Dust fell from the wooden beams above. The doorknob twisted once. Evan raised his rifle. His heart hammered in his chest, but his breathing stayed slow. Another twist, stronger this time. The hunters had found them. Then came a voice, cold, deep, familiar to Lyra. "Open the door, sister." Lyra's face went white with terror. "That is my elder brother." "Korath," she whispered. He's the one who dragged me into the snow. Korath's voice grew harder. We know you're in there. Come out. Do not make this worse. Evan stepped forward and shouted back, She's not going anywhere. A moment of silence. Then the hunter laughed, low and cruel. A human? Protecting her? You don't know what you're doing. Another heavy thump hit the door, almost breaking it off its hinges. Evan braced himself. Korath spoke again, this time sharper. Human, move aside. This is alien clan business. She and her weaklings must die. Evan clenched his jaw. Over my dead body. The insults didn't stop. You protect her? She is nothing. A defect. She brought shame to us. The weak deserve the cold. Lyra covered her mouth to stop a sob. She still had bruises from when those same voices dragged her through the snow. Evan felt anger burn inside him, not like fire, but like solid steel. No child deserves death. No mother deserves this, he said. You won't touch them. The door exploded inward before he could say more. Snow blasted in. A huge alien stepped through, tall and armored in thick fur. His skin was dark blue, eyes bright yellow, Korath. He bared his teeth like a predator behind him. Two more hunters entered with sharp ice-forged spears. Evan fired a warning shot. The bullet hit the doorframe close to Korath's head. Korath paused, but only for a second. Bold, he growled. But bullets won't stop us. The second hunter lunged forward. Evan dodged and hit him with the rifle's handle. The alien fell back, stunned. But the third hunter threw a spear that grazed Evan's arm, ripping his coat and skin. Evan hissed in pain but stayed standing. Lyra cried out, Stop! Please, but Korath only pointed at her with hatred. You should have died in the snow. Evan charged forward before Korath could take another step. He tackled the huge alien into the wall. The cabin shook. Snow and dust fell from the ceiling. Evan managed to fire another shot into the floor near Korath's hand. Forcing him to pull back, the fire crackled louder as if scared. The twins began crying again loud this time. Their cries filled the room, painful and desperate. Korath turned toward the sound. There, the weaklings. That single word weaklings pushed Evan past all fear. He stood between Korath and the babies, blood dripping from his wound. You're not touching them, Evan said. Voice cold as the storm outside. Korath hissed in rage and raised his spear. Evan tightened his grip on the rifle. He had only one bullet left. One chance. One choice. Outside, the blizzard roared like it wanted to swallow the whole world. Inside, 3 hunters closed in. Evan stood alone, and the final blow was seconds away. Korath lunged forward with his spear, aiming straight for Evan's chest. Evan barely dodged, feeling the cold metal slice past his coat. He stumbled back but kept the rifle raised. The cabin felt too small, too tight for 3 trained hunters and 1 exhausted human. The fire flickered wildly as, if frightened by the violence inside, the second hunter recovered from the earlier hit and charged again. Evan swung the rifle like a bat, smashing it into the alien's jaw. The alien collapsed, stunned but not unconscious. Evan knew he had only seconds before the man got up again. Behind him, Lyra held her twins close, whispering soft words to keep them calm. Her eyes were wide with fear as she watched Evan face all 3 hunters alone. She tried to stand to help him, but her legs trembled and collapsed under her. Her body was still too weak from the cold. Korath roared and struck again. Evan lifted his rifle to block the spear. The spear smashed into the rifle's wooden frame and cracked it. Evan gritted his teeth, the impact sending pain all the way through his arm. You fight well for a human, Korath growled. But this ends now. Evan didn't answer. He didn't have time for words. He only had instinct and the burning need to protect the mother and her newborns behind him. The third hunter came from the side, swinging a curved blade. Evan ducked just in time. The blade sliced through the air where his head had been. Evan kicked snow and dirt into the hunter's eyes, buying himself a moment. Then he made his move. He fired the last bullet. The shot echoed through the cabin like thunder. The bullet struck Kareth's shoulder, sending him back with a roar of pain. Not a killing blow, but enough to hurt him. Enough to make him hesitate. For a moment, the room fell silent except for the crackle of fire and the soft whimper of the twins. Evan dropped the empty rifle. Now he had nothing but his fists and whatever strength remained in his trembling body. Kareth's eyes burned with rage. "I will tear you apart with my hands," he snarled. Evan stepped in front of Lyra, blood running down his arm, breathing hard. "If that's what it takes," he said, "I'll still protect them." The second hunter got up again, wiping blood from his mouth. "A human protecting alien weaklings," he muttered. "Pathetic." Evan tightened his fists. "You want pathetic?" he said. "Come find out." The hunters attacked together this time. Evan ducked one blow, blocked another, and punched the second hunter in the throat. Pain shot through his hand, but the alien stumbled back, gasping. The third hunter grabbed Evan from behind, trying to choke him. Evan slammed his elbow into the alien's ribs again and again, until the grip broke. But Kareth was already coming. Bare-handed, angry, deadly. He grabbed Evan by the neck and lifted him off the ground. Evan's feet kicked helplessly in the air. His vision blurred. He struggled to breathe. Lyra screamed his name. Kareth growled, "This is the price you pay, human." Evan clawed at Kareth's arm, desperate. His strength was fading fast. His lungs burned. He felt seconds from death. And then, a loud cracking sound. The old cabin roof, weakened by snow and battle, broke apart. A massive block of ice and wood fell from above and crashed directly onto Kareth's back. Kareth dropped Evan and roared in pain, pinned under the debris. Evan collapsed to the floor, coughing, struggling to breathe. His vision swam, but he forced himself up on shaking hands. The other two hunters froze in shock. Evan didn't waste the moment. He grabbed a burning piece of wood from the fire and swung it wildly. Flames flashed through the air. The hunters backed away. Fire was one thing they feared. "Get out!" Evan shouted, waving the fire at them. "Now!" The hunters hesitated, then fled out into the snowstorm, leaving Kareth trapped under the broken roof. Evan tossed the wood aside and fell to his knees. Lyra crawled toward him, still holding the twins. Tears ran down her face. "You saved us," she whispered. "You saved all of us." Evan shook his head weakly. "It's not over. They'll be back. We have to leave before more come." Outside, the blizzard roared on, wild, merciless, and ready to swallow anything left behind. Evan forced himself to stand, his legs barely steady. He looked at Lyra and the newborns, then toward the endless storm outside. "We leave now," he said. "It's our only chance." And with that, their desperate escape began. Evan wrapped Lyra and the newborn twins in every blanket he could find inside the broken cabin. The fire was dying, the storm outside growing louder, and every second they stayed meant danger. Kareth was trapped but alive, and the other hunters would soon return with more reinforcements. They had to leave before the snow buried everything, including them. Evan grabbed a half-broken wooden sled leaning behind the cabin. It was old, but still strong enough to carry Lyra and the babies. He placed soft cloth on it, then helped Lyra lie down while holding her twins close to her chest. Her face was pale and her breathing shaky, but she nodded when Evan asked if she was ready. "I will not slow you down," she whispered. "You're not slowing me down," Evan said firmly. "You're the reason I'm not giving up." He tied a thick rope around his waist and attached it to the sled. The moment he stepped outside, the storm almost pushed him back inside. The wind felt like icy hands clawing at his face. Snow hit him so hard he could barely open his eyes. But he planted his feet in the deep snow and leaned forward. One step, another, and another. The sled moved. Slowly, but it moved. Behind him, Lyra kept her twins warm with her body heat, whispering soft alien lullabies to keep them calm. Their tiny breaths fogged the blankets. "Evan," she called softly, "why are you doing this? You owe me nothing." Evan didn't stop walking. "Because no one deserves to die alone in the snow. Not you. Not your babies." The storm roared around them, erasing their footprints as fast as they made them. The world felt endless and empty. But Evan trusted his memory. He had walked this way earlier. The human town lights should be somewhere ahead, if the storm hadn't erased them. His legs burned with exhaustion. The wound on his arm stung sharply with every movement. He felt lightheaded, but he kept pulling. The wind tried to knock him down again and again, but he forced himself forward with pure will. Lyra watched him, her heart tightening. No member of her species would carry another adult this far through a deadly storm. Humans, she thought, were different, strong, kind. She whispered, "Evan, thank you." He did not answer. His focus was on survival, but something else moved behind them, a distant howl. Then another. Not wolves. Not the wind. Something heavier. Lyra stiffened. "They're following." Evan didn't stop, but he felt his stomach drop. The remaining hunters were tracking them. Even the blizzard was not enough to hide their trail for long. The howls grew louder. Closer. Evan tightened the rope around his waist and picked up his pace. His muscles screamed. His knees trembled. But he kept going. "We'll make it," he whispered to himself. "We'll make it." Then, through the storm's white curtain, a faint orange glow appeared. Lyra saw it too and gasped. "Evan, the light's your town." Evan almost collapsed from relief. The human settlement was close now. Maybe a few 100 meters. Maybe less. He dragged the sled faster, ignoring the pain in his arm and the fire in his lungs, but the howls behind them turned into angry shouts. Shapes moved through the storm, chasing them. "Evan, they are coming!" Lyra cried. He looked back and saw them, 3 dark figures running through the snow. Spears in hand, fury in their eyes. Evan shouted, "Hold on!" and pulled with everything he had left. The wind screamed. The hunters roared. The lights of the town grew brighter, but his legs were giving out. Lyra looked at him with fear and desperation. "Evan, you cannot fight them like this." "I don't have to fight," he said, gasping for breath. "I just need to get you past that hill." The hunters were almost close enough to strike. The town was only a few steps away. Evan pushed forward one last time. One final burst of strength. And then he saw shadows of humans running toward them with lanterns and weapons. Help, finally. But Evan did not know if he would make it long enough to reach them. Evan's legs almost collapsed as he pushed over the last snowy hill. The rope around his waist burned against his skin. His breath came in sharp, painful bursts. Behind him, the hunters were now close enough that he could hear their heavy boots hitting the snow. Their angry shouts cut through the storm like sharp blades. But ahead through the blizzard's thick white curtain, Evan saw human shapes holding lanterns. They were rushing toward him, their lights glowing like tiny stars in the darkness. A few carried rifles. One shouted his name, "Evan." It was the search team from the town. Relief hit Evan so hard that he almost fell, but he forced himself to stay upright. "Keep going," he whispered to the rope, as if telling his own body not to shut down. On the sled, Lyra held her newborn twins tightly. Their tiny bodies were still warm under the blankets, but she could feel their strength fading. She looked at Evan, this human who refused to give up, and tears filled her eyes again. But then she saw something that turned her blood cold. The hunters were no longer walking. They were charging. "Evan!" She cried out. "They are coming fast!" Evan turned, his face pale and exhausted, but his eyes blazing with determination. He saw the 3 hunters sprinting toward them, their silhouettes huge and furious in the storm. They looked like moving shadows, driven by hatred, each holding weapons ready to strike. "Go!" He shouted to Lyra. "Don't look back." But Lyra shook her head. "I will not leave you." Evan didn't waste time arguing. He ripped the rope from his waist and turned to face the hunters head-on. His body shook, his arm bleeding badly, but he planted his feet firmly in the snow. The first hunter reached him with a roar. Evan dodged, grabbed the hunter's arm, and used his momentum to throw him into a snowbank. It wasn't a perfect move. Evan barely stayed standing, but it bought a second. The second hunter swung an ice blade at him. Evan blocked it with his forearm, pain exploding up his arm. He gritted his teeth and punched the hunter hard in the face. The alien stumbled back, surprised at the force from a human running on empty strength. But the third hunter, the fastest, didn't stop. He raised his spear. Evan had nothing left to block with. No bullets. No strength. Just courage. He braced himself, but the spear never touched him. A loud ringing sound filled the air. Clang! A rifle barrel struck the spear aside. 2 human rescuers had reached him. "Back OFF!" One shouted at the hunters. "This is human territory." More rescuers ran forward, forming a protective line between Evan and the aliens. Their lanterns glowed through the storm, bright and warm, cutting through the cold darkness. The hunters hissed, furious and frustrated. One shouted, "This is our clan matter. Hand over the mother." Evan, gasping for breath, shouted back, "Over my dead body." The leader of the rescue team, a tall man named Reddick, stepped forward. "If you want to hurt the woman or the children," he said firmly, "you will fight all of us." The hunters looked around. They were outnumbered. The storm was weakening their strength. Their leader, limping from earlier injuries, snarled but made a sharp hand signal, "Retreat, slowly, angrily." The hunters backed away into the blizzard. Their shadows faded with the snow until they disappeared completely. Evan finally collapsed to his knees. Reddick caught him before he fell face first into the snow. "You idiot," Reddick muttered, though his voice shook with worry. "You should have signaled us sooner." Evan managed a weak smile. "Busy. Saving a family." Reddick's eyes softened as he looked toward the sled. "We'll get them to safety." Lyra reached Evan, tears streaming down her face. She touched his cheek gently, her voice trembling. "You faced death for us. No one from my own clan ever did that." Evan closed his eyes. "You and the twins are safe now." Behind them, the sky began to lighten. Dawn was coming. The storm had finally calmed by the time the rescue team reached the town clinic. The sky shifted from dark gray to soft pink as dawn broke over the snowy hills. It was the first gentle light anyone had seen in hours. Evan, half-conscious and bleeding, was carried on a stretcher by 2 rescuers. Lyra walked close beside him, holding her newborn twins against her chest. She refused to let them out of her arms even for a second. Inside the clinic, warmth wrapped around them like a blanket. The fire burned brightly, and the clean scent of herbs filled the room. Nurses rushed to help. Evan was placed on a bed, and a doctor immediately began cleaning his wounds. He winced, but he didn't complain. His eyes searched the room until he saw Lyra sitting a few steps away, still holding the twins, her face pale but safe. Only then did he close his eyes with relief. The doctor muttered, "This man fought 3 armored aliens with no backup. He's lucky to be alive." Lyra looked at the doctor with soft eyes. "He is alive because he has a brave heart." Hours passed. The twins were warmed, fed, and checked. They were weak but stable. Lyra finally let herself breathe. She watched them sleep in small blankets beside her bed, their tiny chests rising and falling peacefully. For the first time since their birth, she felt hoped at when Evan woke again. Sunlight streamed through the clinic window. The storm was gone. The world was quiet. He turned his head and saw Lyra sitting beside him, her silver eyes watching him closely. "You're awake," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "Can't die now. I still need to make sure you three are okay." Lyra shook her head softly. "We are okay because of you." She hesitated, then added with emotion, "No one in my clan ever protected me." "But you did." Evan tried to sit up. The doctor rushed in and pushed him back down. "Not yet. You rest. Let your ribs heal before you try being a hero again." But Evan's eyes stayed on Lyra. "Your family won't come back here, right?" Reddick stepped into the room at that moment. "Already handled. We sent a message to their clan. They know this town won't tolerate any more attacks. If they try anything, they'll face humans and the cold together. They will not return." Lyra lowered her head in gratitude. "Thank you, truly." Later in the afternoon, Evan was able to sit up slowly. Lyra brought the twins to him. Their small hands reached out toward him, one tiny finger brushing against his wrist. Evan felt something warm spread through his chest. "They like you," Lyra said softly. "They feel safe with you." Evan smiled, gentle and real. "They're strong. They made it through the storm. That makes them tougher than anyone who tried to kill them." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, not of fear this time, but of emotion. "I would not have survived without you. My children would not have survived. Evan, you saved our lives, but you gave us something more." "What's that?" Evan asked. "A future." She looked down at her twins, then back at him. "If you wish. We want to stay here. With you, not out of debt, but because you showed us what a real family feels like." Evan's breath caught. He had lived alone for many years, believing the world had already taken everything from him. He never expected anyone, especially an alien mother and her newborns, to choose him. He nodded slowly, a small smile returning to his face. "I'd like that." Lyra gently placed one of the babies into his arms. The tiny child curled into his chest. Warm and trusting. Outside, sunlight touched the snow, making it shine like gold. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Evan felt the warmth of belonging, a human. An alien mother. 2 newborn twins.